Hello YouTube! Welcome to this video. It's a little bit different. It's about a series of misfortunate events, if we can call it like that. I want to tell you about the worst trip home that I've ever had, and it just happened to me on my way back from France to New Zealand this time. It was probably, I mean, not to be dramatic, but probably some of the worst sort of 48 hours of my life. It was so hectic. Sharing this in hopes of, I don't know, hoping that you don't make the same mistakes as I do. And a shared lesson for us all. Oh, I still can't believe it happened. It's just been crazy. It's been so hectic since coming back. Go, 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 go. Lots of exciting things happening over at Badass Careers. We've been all over the place in New Zealand and just now recovering from COVID. So it's just been non-stop. But I still haven't had time, I don't think, to really process the fact that this even happened. So essentially, I mean, we had a long journey ahead of us anyway. It was never going to be fun, right? We were leaving Marseille in the south of France and coming all the way back to Wellington in New Zealand. Now before, we used to fly from Paris to Auckland. So it was literally just Paris, Dubai, Auckland, or Paris, Singapore, Auckland. Nice and quick. When I say quick, I mean like 29 hours. But relatively quick enough, and that was that. This time, because we now live in Wellington, which is the capital city of New Zealand, but isn't the economic capital, which is Auckland, which is where our biggest international airport is. So we're in Wellington and we're going to Marseille, right? Because Niels' family are all in the south of France. So we've added a couple of legs onto our journey anyway. So we knew that this was going to be like a 35-hour journey going from Marseille to London, London to Singapore, Singapore to Sydney, and Sydney to Wellington. So it was going to be quite a mission anyway. But what happened to Rosie is that she just made it so much worse than you could ever imagine. Okay, so imagine this. We've said goodbye, we've been in France for 3 months, we're really looking forward to coming home, you know, just get back into that routine and everything, but also like really sad to leave France. I know if any of you can relate, being from 2 countries or more, it's just like quite a heavy feeling. And you're just feeling a little bit deflated, a bit off. So we leave, we say goodbye to Niels' parents, and we hop on that plane and we head to London. And in London, we've got like 2 hours to kill. So we make sure we get to our right terminal and we wait for the gate to appear. And so we're just doing a little bit of shopping, getting some snacks for this long haul flight, going to the bathroom, all of that kind of stuff. As soon as the gate appears, we go and head there. But because London Heathrow is so massive, we're hopping on these kind of interterminal trains and everything, and we're traveling to get to the gate. Finally get to the gate. It's probably about, you know, a 20-minute journey all out. We have to do some walking, some training, and we get to our gate and we're just sort of waiting around for our boarding call. And, you know, I mean, I don't like to stay sitting around like in the airport or waiting in line for too long. I do like to hop up relatively early and just get on the plane and just get settled in. So the boarding call happens and Niels is off in the bathroom, and so I'm sort of waiting for him and I'm just getting my stuff ready. And I'm like, just like looking around and I'm like, where the hell is my boarding pass? And I was like, oh, it's fine. Like, I mean, worst comes to worst, I'll be able to print me a new one at the desk, but I better go tell someone, let me just grab my passport. No passport. Like, just realized my passport was missing. At this point, we were like 3 zones away. Remember, like, you know, from where we originally came into the airport, we'd been all around the place and we'd really traveled to get to the gate, to get to where we were. Started absolutely freaking out. I was wearing sort of like a fanny pack, like a bum bag, looking through that. I had a backpack as well, just tearing everything apart. I had my iPad, I had my laptop, you know, you're just sort of like going a bit crazy. I was taking off, you know, the covers of these things. I was throwing things on the ground. I was looking through the snacks. It was absolutely just mind-boggling to me. I was just panicking. What is happening? What is happening? I'm trying to call Niels. Obviously, we don't have SIM cards in London. So, I mean, I'm trying to contact him over WhatsApp, like, hurry up and come back. Like, something, like, urgent is happening. Long story short, couldn't find it. He comes back. I start, like, panicking. I'm like, I do not have my passport. He was like, okay, we need to go talk to the guy. So we went and spoke to the person at the gate. And I was like, look, I don't know where it is, but I do not have my passport on me. I have a digital copy of my passport, which I can show you. I've got my electronic version of my boarding pass and everything, but I do not have my passport on me. And I am on the other side of the world and I don't know how to get home. And I was basically just saying, please just let me get to Sydney and then I can at least sort it out, right? Like at least if I'm in Sydney, I can go to the New Zealand embassy, like I'll be a bit quicker, like I'll be that much closer. Just let me get to Sydney and I'll sort it. And he was basically like, you are not getting on this plane without a passport. And like, so much for all of that advice saying that, you know, always have a digital copy of your passport. I mean, why, to be honest? It doesn't change anything. It was like, nah, you do not pass these gates without a passport. That's just like international flying law. And I was like, wow, okay. We were so far away. You know, as I said, it took over 20 minutes to get to the gate and the plane was boarding. Like, I was just like, I'm never gonna make it. I'm never gonna make it. And Niels and I were looking at each other like, what do we do? And the guy was basically like, you two need to decide whether or not you're happy to fly alone. Like, fly separately. And I was like, I didn't even know what was happening at this point. I was just like seeing everything like fly before my eyes, like the money, the traveling alone on a 35-hour trip. I was like, I just don't want to. I was like, what the hell is happening? And long story short, I was like, well, there's no point in both of us losing our tickets, losing all that money and everything. Like, you just go, Niels. You go and you board the plane and I'm just gonna try and run back and grab my thing. So I was sprinting, I was running my little heart out, but unfortunately I just encountered hurdle after hurdle, barrier after barrier. For example, the trains that dropped us at that gate were actually unidirectional. So they just circulate in one direction. And I was looking for the train back, it didn't exist. The only way to get back, because it's just not the direction that you would ever flow, was to walk. So I just saw that it was 6 kilometers away to get back to where we were, and I was running and running, but I just knew it was over. The adrenaline at the time, I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop crying, I couldn't stop running, I just had to get there. So I got there, I was looking around when we were seated, I went to the bathroom, I went to the information desk because anyone handed in a black New Zealand passport. They didn't see any alerts on their computer whatsoever. It was just so devastating. Long story short, went into every shop, went all the way back to security where I started, and just sort of off the cuff, I kind of went to the people at security and I was like, hey, have you by any chance seen a black New Zealand passport? And the lady turned around and she was like, oh yeah, yeah, it's been here the whole time. Like, she had my passport, she just hadn't alerted any of the information stands, anyone in the airport. She could see, and it had my boarding pass in it, she could see that I was like boarding a 9:30 p.m. flight. I just can't believe, honestly, she didn't contact the gate, she didn't contact anyone. Like, not to blame because I was, you know, the stupid one that left it there, but essentially what happened is I left my black passport in a black security tray and I just visually did not get it, and I let the stress of being at London Heathrow, people are like quite angry, they're rushed, they're like moving behind you, you're moving your stuff through so quickly and you have to get everything out, and it's just like, you know, people are like disgruntled and you just like grab your stuff and get out of the way as soon as possible. I'll tell you something, I will never like people please again. Like, I will be taking my sweet ass time to make sure I have collected everything from those trays. So my passport was right there. I could have cried and I was like, can you please call the gate? Can you please call the gate and tell them we're coming? They're like, we can't call anyone here. Like, we can't leave the security area, go to the information desk. I went to the information desk, I was like, please, I still have 10 minutes, so like, it's over. I'm never gonna wait for you. And I was like, please call them for me. They were trying to call, it wouldn't go through. Like, nothing was working for me. Like, no one answered. It was just over. And so at that point, that she just basically turned around to me and was like, we're gonna try and see if we can get you onto another flight. So I was like, okay. And I couldn't have time to connect to the airport Wi-Fi or anything to contact Niels. It was just like, I mean, I just hoped he was on that flight, and he was gone at that point. So at that point, they were looking and they were like, because it's summer and because, you know, flights have been booked out for ages, it's like post-COVID and stuff, the earliest flight we can get you on is in 3 weeks' time. And we can't tell you how much more it will cost, just that you have to sort of book it now, and we'll let you know close to the time when you've like activated your seat or something like that. Like, basically they could put a placeholder for me for a flight in 3 weeks' time. Now, the Queen had just died. There was no accommodation in London, like zero. It was booked out. And I was just, and her celebrations were coming up and it was just like, it was not possible that I was going to be in London for 3 more weeks. And plus I'd just been in France for 3 months. Like, I wanted to come home. So I was like, honestly, just leave it. She's like, you can come back on standby every day, the same time, 9 p.m. time and time again for the next few days. And if by the rare chance, you know, someone doesn't show up, someone cancels or anything like that, we might be able to get you on through standby. But other than that, like, it's over essentially. So I walked away flightless. Thankfully, I had my passport, but I had no options. And I had to get home to New Zealand, knowing that my husband had just probably started, you know, a 35-hour journey alone. So at this point, I had to go to security and get escorted out. It was like, they were almost treating me like a criminal, because they were like, oh, so you're here for a flight, hey, but you missed it, hey. Like, it all sounds very dodgy. And they were just like grilling me and asking me all these questions. And they're like, why didn't you ask the guy at the gate to wait for you? And why didn't you do this? And why didn't you do that? And I'm like, I did. I was just like bursting into tears. I was like, please, you've got to help me get home. La la la. Like, they were just like, we need to escort you out. They escorted me out the back entranceway, but I needed to pick up my luggage, right, in case I, you know, it was a bomb threat or something. And they lost my freaking luggage. So I was sitting there on the ground for like 2 hours. Now, at this point, like, not only was I freaking out because they were like, by the way, when the terminal closes at midnight, like, you're gonna have to come back and see if you can find your luggage tomorrow. And I was like, I don't want to like book a flight and like leave London without my luggage. It has like a lot of, you know, expensive technology in there. I was just honestly like, what is happening to me? Throughout this time, I was looking for flights, and it was like what you saw was not what you got. There were a few flights available in the next few days. That's it. I'm talking about like 2 options. And they'd say that they were, say, $5,000, but when you'd actually go and click on them and go to check out through websites like Expedia and places like that, they absolutely screw you. Just as you go to put in your credit card, they're like, oh, sorry, the flight's 14 grand now. Like, they trick you, they get you in, and then they can completely explode the price, which I understand because they're obviously working on people's desperation, which is just terrible given that most people are probably booking last minute flights for the death of a loved one or something. But that's what was happening to me. I was starting to really, really panic. I found one flight that I really liked the look of on Air New Zealand. It was from London to Houston, I believe, and then Houston all the way back to Auckland, I believe. Or we might have had one stopover in Australia. But anyway, it was a pretty good flight. And I was like, okay, this is my last chance. I have to get this flight. So I went to buy the flight with my credit card, and it wanted to send me a text message to verify the payment because it was such a large sum of money, talking about in the magnitude of about 5,000 New Zealand dollars, which is just obviously like gross and devastating. And I knew at that point, by the way, that the travel insurance was out because it was my fault. And yes, I double checked, and yes, it's definitely the case. So if it's your fault, basically too bad for you. So I was trying to buy this flight, and they went to send me a text. I'm in London. I cannot receive text messages. And I had just left my little French SIM card in France. I didn't even have a SIM card on my phone. So I couldn't receive any messages, no which way I wanted to go about it. I could not receive an SMS. So I tried calling my bank. I was on hold with my bank for honestly about 75 minutes. They had like higher than normal call volumes, and I was getting passed around department to department. I was like, please turn my security feature off. They couldn't turn it off. I mean, I was just begging them. I was like, I've got an emergency. Like, you've got to take away that level of security. Like, I'm all for 2-factor authentication, but like, this is literally stopping me from being able to come home. So I was like faffing around with them, and they wouldn't turn it off. And then, so I was like, okay, I'm going to update my phone number to my best friend's phone number. So I put her phone number in instead. By putting in her phone number, I was like, cool, she'll receive the text and tell me what it is. Because I was like on the phone with her simultaneously, like on Messenger. Like, it was just like absolutely wild. And I updated my phone number on my Westpac, like online banking. Long story short, they were like, thank you for your updated phone number. We will send you a verification code or something by mail that you'll receive within 30 days, and you need to activate your new number. It was just like, what is happening to me? So I'm like hysterical at this point. I'm asking for people's credit cards. I'm like, can anyone help me? Like, my best friend ended up getting her stepdad's credit card. You know, imagine like asking everyone you know, like, can I borrow $5,000 right now? You know, it's sort of just like, I was just like, please, like, I'll pay you back, la la la. I tried transferring the $5,000 to my best friend so she could just do it on her credit card. Same thing. They needed to send me a text to verify and everything. So I was completely stuck. I was like about to use her stepdad's credit card. It was just so intense. And then finally Westpac confirmed that they would take the security measure off my own card for me. Which was just music to my ears. So I went to buy the ticket and guess what? It was sold. It was gone. Sold out. I had TransferWise as well. I couldn't even log into TransferWise because they wanted to send the security notification to my French phone number, which was the most recent one I had registered. It was just like, I can't even tell you what a mess it was. It was so cruel and unusual. So at this point, finally a little bit of good news. My suitcase had arrived and they gave it to me while simultaneously kicking me out of the hotel. My phone was dying, my laptop was dying, I had like 2% left on both. I was connected to the airport Wi-Fi. I had no way of charging my devices because I'd been like sort of kicked out and rushed out like past the shops and everything. And I was just like, I will be stranded in London, I have no ticket. I was desperate, I was exhausted. I used my last 2% in my airport Wi-Fi to go on this website I had never heard of before. I was just absolutely desperate on this sort of like third-party multi-flight search kind of thing, kind of like Skyscanner but like dodgy. And I just ended up buying a ticket, and it was a ticket to get back home, you know, in about, let's say 24 hours from where I was currently. So leaving in about 24 hours from then. And it was the last one I could find on the internet for the next, honestly, 4 days. Everything was absolutely 110% sold out, booked out, or at least 14 grand. I ended up paying a lot of money for this ticket because it was premium economy as well. So we're already up to like 6,000 New Zealand dollars. It was like just one of those kill me kind of moments. So I mopily went to the Sofitel in the airport and I asked them if they had any space left, and they explained because of the Queen and everything, they didn't have any space for me. However, and I was like basically in tears, I was just like, please double check, I'll take anything. I was like, I just need a charger. Like, I will sleep in your like business center if I can just have access to somewhere I can charge my devices and just sleep. And so like I was quite lucky in that they did have one sort of disabled facility room for me where everything's just very low to the ground. It's for wheelchair access and that kind of stuff. I was like, I will take it. It was 900 New Zealand dollars, almost $1,000 for a night's accommodation. I was just like, again, the Queen had just died. At this point, I wanted to tear my hair out. I wanted to scream, but I was just like, thank you, I'll take it. This was just racking up to be like the worst mistake of my life. And luckily they had a converter that I could also purchase, thank you Sofitel, for an extra $40, which helped me convert my New Zealand charges into the UK version. So I was like, yes, I'm going to be able to charge my laptop. So I get to my hotel room and I am charging my laptop on the phone to my best friend, and I received this confirmation email from this like dodgy site. It was full of spelling mistakes, and when I googled the name of the place, the first things that were coming up, I'll put them here as well on the screen, were like scam, buyer beware, big scam, fake, not real, all of this kind of thing. And I was like, oh my god, I've bought a scam ticket. So I'm like calling them and someone answers and they're like, yeah, no, it's legit. We just need to send you an email with a special link so you can pay again, because it's only a fake hold on your credit card. And when you use this link, you'll actually secure your ticket. Can you imagine like how dodgy is that? And the portal, like I clicked on the link. I probably shouldn't have even done that in hindsight, but I clicked on the link and it was so ugly. Like it was like a website built in 92. You know, it was just so basic. It looked like, you know, that Lemmings game or something. It was just absolutely unprofessional, this dodgy payment portal. And I was like, I've already given you my money, you've already got my credit card details, like why would I pay again? Like I was just very confused. So I decided to get off the phone to them because at this point it was like 2 a.m. and I was getting delirious. And so I ended up calling Air New Zealand and I asked them, is this ticket real? Like, is this, like, I was checking online, it couldn't come up with any booking information for me. And they were like, the flight is real and we can actually see a hold against your name. And I was like, okay, so does this mean it's real, or does this mean they know how to do that in the system to like hold it so that you feel reassured and everything? But at this point, I think the place was called Travelcation. At this point, Travelcation was honestly my only option. Air New Zealand were like, look, you've got a hold against your name. The ticket has not been released because no money has been received. It's like sort of like not a real purchase, but we can see something there. That's all we can tell you. You're working with a third party. Like we have zero, you know, say in all of this. Like move forward at your own risk, basically. I was on hold with them for an hour and a half for them to tell me that. So at this point, it's like 3:30 a.m. in the morning. And so I click on that bloody link from this dodgy website. I put in my credit details and I just crossed my fingers and I thought to myself, please, just please, can this work? Now, the payment went through. I spent my $6,000 and a very ugly itinerary came through, almost like it was made up in a .txt file, right? It was like this kind of weird, scammy looking itinerary, but something happened, an itinerary came through, more spelling mistakes, but like I had something in my hands, right? And I was like, okay, this is something I've got, you know, I've got a booking reference, I've got something that I can put into the machines when I go to check in first thing tomorrow morning. But then I see a massive disclaimer in the email and it was like, you are going to be traveling through the US, because I was going through San Francisco. You're going to be traveling through the USA. You are going to need an ESTA travel visa. And it's very important that you generate these before you leave because they take 72 hours to come through. Now at this point I was leaving in like 16 hours. So I quickly applied for my ESTA travel visa. There's no way to fast track it. You can't just pay more for it to happen. There's nothing you can do. I just submitted my visa application and was again on the phone to my friend, just absolutely hysterical. I was up until 8 a.m. that night waiting for just refresh, hoping something would come through. And just by way of pure magic, my ESTA travel visa got approved in about 6 hours. I had it. In theory, I had my itinerary and I didn't have e-tickets, I didn't have anything that looked real, but I had some sort of booking reference and receipt from some dodgy company, and I had my travel visa. And so I finally let myself go to sleep for like 4 hours. I woke up obviously thinking like just my first thought was like, please let this have been a nightmare. It wasn't. I woke up in my Sofitel room, everything low-lying to the ground, like where am I again? And I mean, honestly, I haven't even told you all of it. Like in the background, I had friends calling flight centers, calling travel agents, like honestly, like the freaking New York Stock Exchange, trying to get me home, like sending me messages. You could take this one for $4,000. You can take this one if you can leave in 5 days. But anything that was leaving in 5 days, I'm like, it's costing me $1,000 a night to stay in London. So like, I mean, it just didn't even make sense. So anyways, I packed up my suitcase and I headed to the airport just thinking to myself, please let this work. And I can't tell you the relief I felt when I put that 6-digit booking reference into a ticket dispenser and it actually started printing boarding passes. Like I'm getting teary-eyed now just thinking about it. I was just like, is this dodgy scam like third party actually real? And it was actually real flights. The boarding passes were printing. I had my ESTA travel visa and I walked through security. And of course I was so paranoid about my passport. I was checking it every 3 seconds. Like, is it there? Is it there? I actually developed like a bit of a tic. It was quite intense, but I got it and I got onto that flight. And so I actually only ended up arriving home about a day later, which is just wild, like a day and a half later. And I actually got to fly premium economy for the first time, which was nice, a little bit more leg room, and I do think the food was nicer and the screens were bigger and everything, so that was quite comfortable. It was very boring doing it all alone, but I mean, hey, you gotta do what you gotta do. I honestly can't believe I got home, but what a hellish ride. Oh, and by the way, one of my final connections was so delayed and the connection time was so tight that I actually had to sprint again, run between like my flight at the international Auckland terminal and going to the domestic terminal. I was dripping with sweat. I probably smelled disgusting. I feel so sorry for whoever had to sit next to me. And I almost missed that flight as well, but I did actually, everything in the end, I did get home and there were no further dramas. But yeah, that was just my wild story. Let me know what you think down below. Always, I mean, not everyone's passport is black, right? To be on a black tray, but always check that you have your passport every single step of the way, because what an expensive and emotionally draining lesson to learn. Like, I feel like I honestly lost 10 years of my life through that experience. But yeah, have you ever had anything similar happen to you, or if you have your own horror story of your own, definitely let me know down below. It might make me feel that much better about this circus fiasco that I went through. And otherwise, thanks for watching, and I'll see you here next time on the Not Even French YouTube channel. Hey, you never know, maybe more crazy stories to come. À bientôt!